Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Sarah DeHaven. She does a YouTube channel, Adept Guidance, and I think that is also the name of her website, adeptguidance.com. I'll put all the links below in the description. How are you doing today, Sarah?
I am doing pretty okay.
Oh,
I'm
pretty
doing all
okay.
right. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Good. What's new with you? And yeah, what do you want to talk about here? We kind of have some subjects to talk about.
yeah, fair enough.
Procession again. We're
Hmm.
trying to talk about this strange age that we're in, all the
Yeah,
forces that are sort of, I don't know if it's influencing or if it's just reflecting what is happening, but yeah, there's some interesting stuff that we can talk about.
yeah, for sure. Well, new stuff. First off, yeah, I'm working on a Mars and Pluto series just for fun. Really, I thought it might be fun for people to know. So, just moving into that to teaching a little bit more because where I'm at this point, like a realization has come to me. It's been like 8 years now that I've been doing this work professionally, quote unquote professionally. Um, and It's so much of a folly for someone in a position of guidance to uh, guide people more, like kind of put them on a track rather than help them figure out their own way of going and then supporting that. And so I try to minimize that as much as possible, and I always have. And now where I'm at, I don't even like doing predictions. I kind of like reading the energy and trying to figure out how to deal with now, because like I just want to teach people how to go here, like be here and navigate to the best of their ability. So yeah, I'm focused more on teaching right now so that I can support that. Of course, I still do private counsel and whatnot, but it's from a position of deconditioning and supporting how someone's wired so that they're navigating the best they can. Um, got a class coming up in September with the YouTube Academy, so that's finally coming out, much anticipated. We'll be teaching on phases. So now, like I was saying with the Mars and Pluto, I'm teaching how to read Mars and Pluto by phase, but in the YouTube Academy, which is on Stormy Grace's YouTube channel, I'll be teaching how to read like phasal relationships between planets in general. So it'll be more of an overview so that people can apply it to any two planets that they would like to scrutinize from that type of a lens. Um, and other than that, just doing my own work and living life and kind of just watching as things unfold. What's real interesting though is that there's so much chaos happening in the world right now, so much randomness happening, and yet the more that I kind of just focus on living life naturally day to day and my rapport with the outer world, but also with my inner self, the chaos doesn't seem to be so hard to navigate. I imagine if someone's plugged into the media or plugged into what the collective's gossiping about or focused on at any point in time during these days, though, it could be probably very just very difficult to navigate, very confusing, probably. But yeah, lots we could talk about with regard to that for sure.
Yeah, I don't follow the news very much myself, and I can like I can't imagine how stressed out people are that like are into it on a daily or like multiple times daily,
Wow.
checking in. It's just like, what? Yeah, go outside, relax, focus on your family and stuff going on with your life, right? But that's the difference between like the introvert and this extroverted life, right? Everything is extroverted for these people, and I mean, that's why they have really no center. They're very unbalanced,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're just losing their head over. It's amazing how it's like the news and like the media manipulators can literally make people just jump up and down at their own whim. Like we have gigantic global conspiracy where the world is locked down. People are committing suicide left and right. Young kids are committing suicide. 10 and 12-year-olds are committing suicide. But then there's outcry over like whatever's going on down in the States right now. There's more outcry about that than there is about a gigantic global conspiracy on an economic, medical, political, religious, whatever level. barely any outcry over that compared to the outcry over these things that the media will just push in front of you. It could be Ukraine, it could be Roe versus Wade, it could be whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wild, right? Where it's like, this is sure, it's still an issue. It's a small issue compared to, again, a global conspiracy that has literally caused so much damage, wrecked thousands of people are dead from it, millions are injured, half the world's bankrupt. That the outcry is very minimal. So it's just crazy because the news manipulators aren't pushing it as much as these other issues, I guess. I'm ranting, but
No, it's just interesting because as you're saying this, I'm just considering the energy that's been in play over this course of the last couple of years. And, you know, as you're talking, it's interesting because it's so easy to take a person who's out of body and blow them in any direction.
yeah.
Right? If I'm thinking air element, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to really be able to see what's going on, yes, we need the air elements to see clearly, but if we're not grounded in the earth, like in our body, to be able to feel somatically as well, like to connect and rapport with our body's intelligence, it's really hard to know which way is up, down, left, or right. And then the generational trauma that people are dealing with on top of that drastically decreases emotional intelligence and causes them to want to claw out of the body because it's so painful to be in here, you know. I mean, speaking from my own experience, like when you have a lot of generational like awareness of what the generations have been carrying through, the ancestors, you feel a lot of discomfort. You know. And so, you know, I mean, when people don't like people aren't aware of that is even a thing, and then they have this complex because of the trauma, because of an arrested emotional development of not understanding what it is to truly be an adult, it's automatic that we're going to want to look for parents for guidance. And of course, the de facto parents are the leadership, I guess you could say, that humanity has agreed would take on that position, whether they're aware of that consent or not, right? It's yeah, like that 2020 conjunction in Aquarius, it's just so interesting to me because that was a real initiation. And I mean, we can't say what the implications of that are really going to be until the end of the cycle and Jupiter and Saturn meet again, which will be, I think, about 20 years from now. And then there's also the ripples of the previous cycles coming into this too. So it might take even longer to really see what's being developed with this conjunction. But my gosh, you know, it's I would say it's concerning, but at the same time, it's not surprising. So I'm kind of like, I'm kind of in an ambivalent space myself right now when it comes to this, because the frustration I feel at how can you not see, you know, that's like a visceral reaction I have. It's like, how can you not see? But then there's also they clearly don't see. So what are you going to do about that? What can you do about that? What's the best course of action, you know, so that you're doing something good with the time you have and the energy you have. It's something that's going to be very different for all of us, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Well, you do the astrology guidance and stuff like that, which I think helps people. The only way is on an individual level, I feel like. I don't think there's ever a collective awakening or anything like that. It's like one person at a time. You know, the people that want help or want to change the way they view things. And yeah, you brought up like complexes. That's what it is. Like when people say that, when people are triggered by something, it's actually just triggering a complex. And complexes in Jungian terminology are basically like feeling toned associations around a common theme. So it's like, and everyone has complexes. Like I have complexes, you have complexes, and they're not always bad. It's just like, hey, it's like you have feeling toned associations around a common theme: money, father, mother, whatever. But these complexes, because of trauma and because of just this undealt with, you know, it's like the still small voice within has been so suppressed. It's like they can't, you know, when when they're being triggered by the news or whatever, they're just not in their center at all. Right. So they, like you say, they can blow with the wind anyway. It's like jump up and down. How high do they want to jump? They can make someone upset about anything if they put it on the news if you're not in your center, right? Because they know how to work on these psychological complexes. And so I think it's always individual growth. Everyone's on a different part of their journey too, right? Like not everyone's ready to wake up. And that's what we're seeing now. Like people are being shown all this stuff, but they didn't do the groundwork, right? Like a lot of us, like you and I, for example, and other people have probably been doing this work for a long time. And we've already gone through some of these deconstructive phases that has sort of helped us. We've gone through that dark night of the soul, that underworld process. And so now that like the whole world is in one, it's like, hey, we've kind of been down here for a while. We're okay with it, right? Like,
yeah.
It still sucks. Don't get me wrong, but I was talking to Fiona Edgar yesterday, and she was talking about like Ragnarok and the Kali Yuga. And for like the last couple of years, even though it's actually been pretty stressful on me, I didn't really realize it, just with my kids and everything going on. Like, there's this unconscious sort of worry for them. But for me, like I said, I've been into this for a long time. I've been talking about this stuff for a long time. And I was talking with Fiona. It's like, she's like, oh, I've just had such a good couple of years, really. And it's because, it's no fun being in the Kali Yuga when no one else realizes it. When now that people are starting to realize it, it's like, hey, like we've got some more cohorts. We're trying to explain these things to people 10 years ago, even though there's all these other signs that have been going on. It's like it was so much harder. Now people are starting to see like, oh, hey, the unstableness of the ground that they're on, the lies, all this stuff, because people don't like being lied to and believing in lies their whole life. I think that's the biggest problem right now, is people are all their lies, that the veil is falling away. They're looking at the Wizard of Oz and they still kind of want to follow him. They're like, oh, I wish the curtain would just go back up and we could go back to normal. We hear this a lot. Oh, back to normal, back to normal. It's never going back to normal. There is no normal. It's going to go back. There's going to be something different. Everything is always changing, right? And that's what you will learn from astrology. I guess that gives you the objective perspective on things that are happening. So I don't know where you're going to jump in on that, but
no, you're right though. It does give an objective perspective because it really shows what's been happening energetically in the cycles, at least in this corner of the world that we call like of the world, like the universe that is the earth, right? From our perspective here. Just give me a sec because I want to figure out where I wanted to tap into this. Yeah, when you said going back to normal, it's like it was never normal. It was always an abomination. It was never normal. You know what I mean? And so we can look at it from a higher perspective and say, oh, but it's all unfolding as it should be. And so it was normal because everything's normal. And it's just like that kind of stuff. If you haven't developed the wisdom somatically, like somatic wisdom, and then you're living up there, you might not have the full picture. And so like I'm talking about bypassing and stuff because I still see this a lot as well with like people who are into spirituality or who are studying even occult light, we'll call it LITE, and
right.
stuff like that, right? It's I don't know, because like I try not to be too critical because it's, having so much Capricorn in my chart, it's something certainly that is important for me to transmute in this life so that I'm decalcifying certain things that are obfuscating my ability to see clearly. But at the same time, looking objectively at the situation, it does seem to me at the core of all of the problem that's really happening here is a schism between, like it's fracturing inside of us all. The father and the mother and the child are screwed up. I kind of touched on that in the last, like on my YouTube channel in the last video I did. But that's really kind of what it is. It's the dark and the light are not in accord. They don't see each other. They don't even want to touch each other. It's so interesting because like where I'm at, I have people in the very love and light community as part of my friend circle. And then I have people way at the other end who are like fuck that. And then there's people who are in between, in the center path, you know? And like, the one thing I noticed though is the love and light people, and then the people who are doing like the real shadow work and stuff like that, they never want to take the benefits of what each other have to offer and kind of like integrate it. And when I say never, that's really emphatic. I probably not an appropriate word, but it does seem to be a theme that I'm observing. And yet, like the yin and the yang kind of need to start understanding each other. I mean, we even see this with the just to speak more about like what's going on with society and how things are kind of like, we could see the pathologies in human consciousness, like even the gender identity issues are just like, when you're looking at the astrology previously with Pluto, well, Pluto's still in Capricorn tropically, and sidereally, I think, but like it's gonna be moving into Pluto very soon. Both of these signs, at least from an evolutionary perspective, evolutionary astrology perspective, speak to gender identity and androgyny. Aquarius being androgynous, and then Pluto, Capricorn being gender roles, like this is a mother, this is a father, this is a female, this is a male. And then, you know, Aquarius taking that further and kind of integrating the two and becoming an androgyne or androgynous, right? But yet we see in the consciousness of humanity right now so much confusion with that, we could say, consciousness trend energetically that's kind of going through us like a weather system, and it being because again, back to normal, it was never normal, it was an abomination. So if you have abomination coded into you from the beginning and even generationally, you're going to create Frankensteins. You're going to cut off parts of yourself and sew on new ones and say this is making me whole, but still feel suicidal, or be completely delusional and not understand what is even going on inside of you, and then trying to force everyone else to live in your insane reality by giving you ass pats, or like just kind of like, you know, like condoning a mental illness. And so I'm sorry, I'm like trying not to be rude, but it's just
nailing it.
It's super confusing where we're at for a lot of people. And yet the key is, well, I mean, it really, at the end of the day, like I said, it's the schism. If we could just admit that something we don't feel right inside, whether or not we can put words to it, that we don't feel right within ourselves, most of us, the vast majority of us, if we could do that, then that's at least a start, you know, to say. And the next step that is very important to this is not to say, I don't feel right inside, so you fix me. Daddy fix me, mommy fix me. It's, I don't feel right inside, and the only person who can figure this out, even though I can get help from others, at the end of the day, I'm the one that's going to be fixing this, because no one else literally can get inside of here and deal with that. I'm the only one who can do that. One other thing, I'm jumping ahead or putting the cart before the horse, but we can even see this with the transhumanist agenda, you know, with the whole let's upload our consciousness into a computer. Like, that's lunacy. You can't do that. Like, you literally cannot do that. You would only make a facsimile. It would only ever be a facsimile. So another Frankenstein. But yeah, anyway, rant over.
Yes, good rant. So so it's like, again, it's extroverting this internal process, right? Like, hey, you want to, like in Jungian psychology, it's like you want to be dialoguing and like integrating your anima. Females want to integrate their animus and have that relationship, right? Whereas they are extroverting that. You know, they're like, hey, I don't have a relationship with my anima. But so then they chop off their sexual organs and attach other ones, right? Which is very, again, it's like an extroverting of this process, but these people are jumping on it. Like, they're jumping on this chance to do this to these children, and these, I guess some of them are adults. But yeah, Jung really talks about that. Like, you know, if you aren't going to be integrating or like dialoguing with that feminine side of yourself, this yin yang, right? They meet together to create a whole, an androgyne, right? They're taking it literally. Like, they're taking these, it's basically like a spiritual thing. It's a psychological thing, but you know, psyche is spirit. And they're turning it into this physical thing, this extroverted thing, which is never going to solve the problem. Right? The problem is an internal thing. You can chop off and attach whatever you want physically. It's not going to change this internal struggle that everyone is dealing with, right?
Yeah.
It's just completely wild.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, not to throw to just because the as within so without is almost tropey at this point, but it's true though. If there's aberrations or corruptions inside of ourselves, that have, just and then I say that I don't mean to say like that's an inherent thing to a person. It's not. Like their spirit is not inherently corrupted or aberrant or whatever. Like it's the corruptions on the ego, because even the ego isn't because people will demonize the ego too, and some people have kind of come around to see that it's a useful part of us. It's necessary. I mean, it's obviously there for a reason, but like the issue is the corruptions in the coding of the ego, like viruses, we could say, or malware, whatever the heck it was that's just kind of been put into the code. It's not even the ego inherently that's a bad thing. It's just the obfuscations, the veils over people's consciousness that are making it difficult, at least from my perspective, because from what I believe, like I was saying about my home, like my hometown here, I see so many talented souls, so many talented spirits walking around, everyone pretty much, and yet there's so much down and out, kind of like a mindset, and it's not inherent to them, right? Like everyone, to me, at least in my perspective, is consciousness. So we could say, in a very um uh maybe primitive way, everyone's God, right? To me, at least, I see we are all seeing through the eyes of God, like Jesus or Buddha or whatever, but there's things that are causing us to have trouble seeing clearly, and it's not just seeing with our eyes, it's somatically, it's auditorially, like it's all the clairs, like claircognizance, clairaudience, clairsentience, like those things are distorted, so it's making it hard to see. And some people come in, incarnate, and I think they came here to do some bad shit, and that was their plan from the beginning. But I think the vast majority of people are just dealing with some massive scarring on the consciousness. And so, it's hard for me to like, in my past years, I'd be really frustrated and be like, why don't you just listen, or how can I get you to listen? But I don't know, it's a huge undertaking, given that how many people on the planet are dealing with severe cognitive issues, and don't even understand that pretty much everyone on the planet's struggling. We'll just put it that way. I think that's the nice way to put it.
Well, what's interesting too is like the armoring. It's like they're like shelled up their actual like feelings, right? Like, how do you navigate this world? How do you actually feel? But so it's like your actual feelings are like armored, and then there's like this other surface level of feelings that are like these complexes, which are like the only feelings that they can have, where it's like, really, how do you actually feel deep down? And like, because feeling is like, it's like a judgment thing too, right? It's like, how do you feel about this? Well, they've closed off that natural feeling part because they've had to, through all the trauma and all the shit from like day one of their birth, most likely, or even before that.
Mm-hmm.
And there could be past life stuff going on, and ancestral stuff going on as well. But it's like they've sort of like hardened themselves so much, but then they have these surface feelings that are like, those are the ones that can, like, when they're pulling on people's emotional strings and triggering people. It's like we have two layers of emotions, right? This
Mm-hmm.
surface level stuff that's actually kind of superficial, and then like deep down, how do you actually feel? And I feel it's just like I don't know, there's a severe disconnect between that and these surface level like emotions that are just like easily triggered. Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult times. It's actually, I feel like astrology and psychology are such good tools to like help people. When you look at someone's chart, you can see the stuff they're going through at the moment, and then the stuff that they've been dealing with their whole life. And it's kind of like combining those transits, their natal chart, and then, yeah, some type of spiritual practice for these people. It's so hard to help someone in that situation that doesn't want to be helped either. They think they're fine in a way, right? So it's the only people we can help are the people who are willing to take that first step, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we can even see, if you look at the planetary nodes of Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter, they've spent an incredible amount of time. Like I think for Pluto and Saturn, it's like 1,000 years. Jupiter kind of jumps back into Sagittarius every so often, but their south nodes, the point is they've been in Capricorn for a really long time. So what that means is that even if you're not a Capricorn, you're going to have ancestral memory as far as how society is built, what your limitations are, even in your, like in the subconscious, like I'm using the archetypes of these planets here, are going to have Capricorn memories, which means, again, it goes back to the parental thing, the development of maturity, self-determination, but it also shows how people can be manipulated, because if someone's focused on social survival, like, well, if I am ostracized from the group, I won't be able to survive. How do I survive within the group? Oh, okay, I can't think this, I can't feel this, I can't share this, and that's so coded into the memory. It really is, like you said, like the armoring. I mean, calcification is a Saturnian Capricornian concept, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then you think about the polar opposite of that being Cancer energy, the emotions, the moon itself. You can see the dichotomy there, and like the schism cognitively, psychologically. You're absolutely right. Like psychology is so important to understand, for ourselves, to understand ourselves, but also to understand others, because at the end of the day, interfacing with people, regardless of what's going on, at least to me, I've got Libra in my chart, so maybe this is where I'm coming from with this, but diplomacy, and really being able to understand another person's perspective, at least intellectually, can be very useful at a time like this, because I don't think people want to be warlike, and I don't think people want to be in fear. I just think people want to be understood and know that it's safe for them to unfold and develop, because that's the other thing. They're all like inside of themselves, like that you said, that armor. It's like, it's hard to breathe in here. It's getting hard to fucking breathe in here, where like we're meant to be folding outward and feeling into our reality and expanding and developing, so I I I don't know, it's frustrating, but I do feel that it's important to know too, where we to check ourselves, right? Like where we might be in unproductive states of mind that aren't helping navigate what's going on right now. Like what I was saying to you earlier about how, some people can go a little bit too high into the like kind of fruity unicorn territory and be like, it's all written, so why bother doing anything, right? Why bother? Like, I'll just go wherever the wind blows me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine if that's working for them, but for someone like myself, and I think for a lot of people, um, we'd feel a lot more satisfaction if our yang is able to protect the yin and to do the honorable thing. And whatever that's going to look like for all of us, I think part of it is going to be learning how to um, effectively communicate, I think, with people regardless of where they're at. And that's, again, like I said, because I got Libra in my chart, like this is my perspective. It could be very different for other people. That's one thing I've definitely learned in this life, especially doing this work, is everyone's got a very unique way of interfacing with this reality that, as you mentioned with the armoring and stuff, I can see why there can be so much of it, because if you have a way of interfacing with reality that's so antithetical to how reality operates, and yet no one's supporting that when you're growing up, or maybe your whole family and generations of your family, that's never been supported, like it can be, you can doubt yourself so severely and not understand at all why you feel the way you do, and why you feel so unfulfilled, and it's not necessarily because they mean ill or they're trying to hurt people. It's like that they might go along with trying to enforce things on their fellow man, if I'm making sense with where I'm going with this, or like externalizing their pain and being like extroverting it, like you said, they may not be doing that to hurt people. It's just, it's so like it can be so confusing. I mean, a lot of us are the whole of humanity in a lot of ways, we're still children, and so even though we can chronologically age into like biologically, I mean, into an adult, like I try to remember that, so that I'm not like like I because for me, like a lot of my karma is dealing with mean spiritedness. Like I got a strong Lucifer Lilith combination going on in my chart, so you know, like I'm trying to work on that because it's not fair. I wouldn't want that to be how people treat me, especially when I was dealing with a lot of shit when I was younger. So, you know, everyone's developing. I don't know if I have a point with where I'm going. I'm gonna stop.
Well, yeah, so I took a few notes down. People, you're saying like people don't feel safe and they're like, you know, like all shelled up, but it's like they don't feel safe or comfortable even within themselves. That's why there's that extroverting, right? It's like they don't even feel safe within themselves, so they're looking to the outside world for like all that safety and stuff. Yeah, it's funny because you know, like I love Saturn. I'm a Capricorn type person too, and you know, like Saturn, like discipline, mastery of the self. And as I was doing this project recently with Matt Presti, you know, I'm doing this project and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just wasting this guy's time. I'm fucking up, blah, blah, blah. And I was like being really hard on myself. And it's like, and my Saturn is actually squaring my natal Saturn. And so really like, it's so funny because of just like being beat down, you know, like your whole life, you know, you're not good at this, you're not good at that, you're not creative, you're not, you know, all the stuff that happens from society, parents, schooling, whatever. It's like Saturn to me, the way I was feeling it was, you're not prepared, you're not good enough, you're not qualified to do this. But really what Saturn is actually, that's not my complex. Really what Saturn is saying to me is, are you prepared? Are you sure you have done your homework? Are you know what I mean? It's like the different way that we experience it. It's so funny because it's all it's saying is, hey, are you sure you're prepared for this? You know, but the way I'm experiencing is you're not prepared. You're not, you know what I mean? It's like that complex that it's just from being beaten down so much. And so I just had to go and reassure myself. And but it's just like, even for me, like I can see how these people, everyone is going through this in a certain way in their life, right? And yeah, it's just so difficult for me. I have a hard way of just not being like maybe nicer to express things. I have like a Chiron and Gemini, so it's like the way I can communicate without knowing it can like be wounding to other people. So I have to, that's my thing, I have to learn to be a little more sensitive with the way I communicate with others. I did a video a while back when I first started this channel. I did one on Manly P. Hall, 10 vital concepts for personal growth. And in that, what he talks about is we naturally grow to physical maturity, but emotional maturity is something that we actually have to work on, right? So it's like every baby, if they live long enough, will grow to physical maturity, but people will not grow to be mentally mature or emotionally mature, right? And it's like that's the stuff we have to work on with other people, and that's where we have to put the effort in. And it's, yeah, when you're saying like people are just like, oh, everything's faded, so don't do anything, right? It's never been my kind of thing. I don't really like that way, because when you're not actively participating in this world and using your will to, you know, the will to meaning, to more meaning of your life, what will happen, rather than fulfilling your destiny, you will just be going with the whims of fate. And it's just the difference between the way you look at it and the way you actually are acting, you know, like Jung said, like fate is doing gladly that which one must do. But you know, he also talks about it in like a negative way where like fate is like basically you're just like succumbing to the will of these archetypes rather than like your true like individual self, which is actually like it takes willpower. And that's an aspect of the sun too. It's like a willpower thing. So you know, if people just, you know, there is a bit of a fated destiny to life, and there's also this free will aspect which we can sort of tap into to mold and shape this realm that we live in, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely. It makes so much sense too. Like the sun, I mean, in astrology, especially with popular culture, I mean, the sun's kind of been almost diminished in importance, but you bring up a really great point with the sun. It's so important. The will to actualize the self. which is our consciousness, which is, we could say, the divine aspect of who we are, into the physical realm, it does take a lot of energy. Just think about a sun, all of what it creates, the immensity of its power. And we have that within ourselves. And we can either, like you said, just scatter it to the wind and see what happens. Is anything going to take root, or is it just going to be a dormant seed that never actualizes? That's our choice. It's our choice. But I think that, at least for me, and it sounds like for you too, that's not what I'm here for. I kind of feel like, at least at this part of the journey, if we have multiple lives, maybe it'll change. But at this part of the journey, I don't think I'd do too well just sitting back and not doing anything. At the same time, though, I also know that sometimes there can be like a neurosis that develops too, where it's like, I'm not doing enough. Like you mentioned Saturn. You said Saturn squaring Saturn. I just want to make sure. Did you mean like a transiting Saturn squaring your chart, or was
Yeah, the transiting Saturn is squaring my natal Saturn.
Oh man, yeah, I hear you. Like, man, those Saturn transits are very powerful. And it's no surprise, I suppose, and probably no coincidence that Black Sun cults are such a thing. When you think about this social engineering and then using that Saturnian element to almost guilt people into the box. It's like, get in the box.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll get in the box. Oh, and I'll also lock it myself because I don't want you to get mad at me, daddy. Like, this gets so fucked up, pardon my language, but like it is here, though. Saturn's very neutral, really. Like, the energy is very neutral. It's literally a component that I feel like in its neutrality is serving for us, like serving our growth. So there's at least in evolutionary astrology, and I always say that because there's so many other perspectives, but from that paradigm, there's a concept with Capricorn and Saturn called natural guilt. There's also conditioned guilt, which you can get from distortions in Saturn. And the conditioning is clearly not conducive to growth, but natural guilt, although it can feel uncomfortable, can actually help us. So again, like you were talking about, 2 layers of emotions, right? That conditioned guilt is probably on that layer that is so manipulatable. But the natural guilt is something I feel like is really inherent to our reason for being, where it's like, hey, you probably should stand up and say that thing, or maybe you should put yourself out there even though you'd prefer not to, because you have something important to contribute. There's so many ways we could look at it, for instance, I know some people who well, one example, just thinking of somebody who also has Chiron and Gemini, just coincidentally, but loves to act, but doesn't want to put themselves out there because they don't think they're original. You know what I mean? Like, their voice isn't original, and yet it's impossible for them not to be original on some level if they're really keyed into themselves. Yet, based on Saturnian elements, it can really be where we believe that suppression it's almost like a victimization. Like, we take it on, where it's like we're being victimized by this, and it can feel like that because in a lot of ways, from our perspective, like depending on the person, it can be very true. And yet it's almost like the pressure of the earth on a seed. It's like, but you got to push. If you push, you'll see there's a layer past this where you'll feel a lot more free. And sure, there'll be more layers of challenges to come, but it's like you're breaking through and growing from it. So there's usually rewards. Saturn does like to reward hard work and also perseverance, so it's not for nothing. At least from my perspective.
And it's like, again, it's like that fine balance too, like with like Tessarian always says with like the Wu Wei, it's like sometimes you just have to throw away the oars and go where the river takes you.
Great point.
Right. So it's like it's a balance between that, right? And it's just that like that, what they call it, like one-sided ego stance, where it's like you're too much one way, and then you have this what Jung calls like an enantiodromia, where it's like you basically turn into the exact opposite of where you were because there's such a great compensation, right? It's like there's always going to be a compensation in the psyche. If you're too one-sided one way, it's going to compensate in another way, and then that's how neurosis kind of arises and stuff. So I'm not saying, hey, like like make sure you're like micromanaging every aspect of your life, and like sometimes there is just like, hey, go with the flow. Of course, that's part of life, right? But it's when you just, that's the only way you do it. Oh, whatever, Like I remember a description of like when Pluto was in Sagittarius right before it went to Capricorn, there was like the "we are change," Obama, all that stuff. There's no good or bad. It's just the way we think about it. It was like this moral we still have that moral relativism now. But as soon as Pluto went into Capricorn, it was like we started seeing, the structures weren't as solid as we thought they were. That's why I actually like Saturn's going through Aquarius. Hey, it's like, Saturn's like the guy that comes to the building site that's like checking the posts and like making sure, hey, is everything secure here? Because if it's not, the fucking storm of Pluto is going to come and knock all this shit down.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm kind of excited a little excited for like Pluto to come into Aquarius, but it's also going to be a crazy transition too, I think.
Yeah.
That's setting the stage of this new age that I feel like we've been in for a while. We've probably been in for maybe for a couple hundred years. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's so binary, like as, some people might think. I think you're right. It's like a buildup, right? Like we're building into a transition. I don't think there's anything in this reality that's actually like so on off, which is why I think as far as humanity is concerned, because we love boxes so much, like you'll even notice like in the architecture, there's less creative curves and things like that. It's becoming more boxy. I don't know, this is just, it might be nothing, but I mean, and just saying it's interesting because it does seem like nature likes to kind of be a little bit more more of a gradient, we could say. And so, I mean, we've seen lots of, at least even in the recent decades, we could say harbingers of the new age showing up. The conjunction of Pluto and Uranus and Virgo in the 60s, and then the conjunction of Neptune and Uranus in Aquarius in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then of course we're seeing I mean, there's so many we can see, right? Like it does look like a buildup. So I won't mention all of them, but of course the most recent Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius seems very important. And like you said, when Pluto goes in there, it's going to start with its, like its street sweeper and kind of going through those degrees that Jupiter and Saturn went through. And it's going to start pulling out the threads of the tapestry and just unraveling a lot of things. On one hand, I'm kind of excited as well, just because it'll be interesting. We can't say it won't be interesting what could happen, right? And on the other hand, I'm just like, oh God, it could be really interesting in a way where it's like, wow, I don't know. Part of me is just like curious to see where it goes. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
And that's why I love that Saturn. That's why I like it. It's like, are you ready? Are you prepared for this? Right? Like, and a lot of it is like psychological preparation. That's why when this whole meltdown has been happening over the past 2 years, like I had been psychologically prepared for it. It's like I was explaining to Fiona yesterday. It's like when you're like, if you're like gonna box with someone, like you're gonna spar with somebody, it's like, oh, are they left-handed? Are they right-handed? What do they do? You kind of like study your opponent a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, even though when you're in the fight with them, it's still going to be a tough fight, but it's like you are done your preparation, as much preparation as you can do. And so then you kind of just let the chips fall where they may. Like Bruce Lee is like, don't worry about the outcome of the fight. Just remember your training. And then whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Like you've prepared as much as you can to this point. So then that's when you just like throw away the oars and you're in that moment. Right. And that's how I kind of feel about like this whole time we're in. It's like the people who are not mentally prepared for this. I mean, it's pretty obvious who's not mentally prepared for this. Everyone is losing their heads pretty much.
Yeah.
And then there's those of us who are like, oh, this is actually not too bad. Like we're actually kind of fun. We get to do like podcasts and talk about this stuff. But yeah, it's a bit of a, yeah, Saturn, good. But too much. Like that's why this whole Saturn cult of the dark sun, it's like it's been way too much too. Like every like putting in kids in schools from the age of 5, and they're just kind of like going through that. It's a little too much Saturn, maybe.
Yeah.
For some, or it's like in a weird way. It's like in a strict, not in like the self-discipline and mastery way. It's in a like restrictions, sort of rules kind of way. I think that's the only way I can describe it, really. Poor kids.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it. If we even just look at the generations that have been coming through, they've been less and less prepared for adulthood, less and less.
Right.
And so, sorry, that's like one of the things about the millennial generation and the whatever generation they call it after that. Like one of the things that people say is they don't know how to adult. Adulting was even a word that was created around these generations. I'm adulting, like that was never a thing before because I guess there was no need for the word at the time.
Hmm.
But from what I can tell, yeah, there can be so much Saturn that it actually arrests development, because if you can't unfurl into your shape and you're not properly tested to see what, like, your metal, like your
Right.
what you have, there's no rites of passage that we have. And I'm sorry, but the transition from high school into debt slavery through college is not a rite of passage. Like that's
Hmm.
not a rite of passage for most people. And like I feel emphatic about that because the evidence supports that. We're not seeing economic growth. We're not seeing people becoming happier and more resilient and self-sufficient and fulfilled. So clearly these rites of passage, there's something wrong with them.
Hmm.
um Saturn, that's the distortion of Saturn. That's black Saturn, right? Like, and the distortion of Cancer energy, it's polar opposite too, at least zodiacally, right? Like the Cancer Capricorn polarity. With when you have like that's why I say, like, at the end of the day, if anyone wants to figure out what the root cause, at least from my perspective, of what's going on with this planet, it's the schism between the masculine and the feminine. It's the lack of partnership and teamwork between the masculine and feminine inside of ourselves, and then with each other. And Tessarian talks about female psychology. Thank God someone's fucking talking about it, because for real, like I not to throw
Crazy.
females under the bus, but totally to throw females under the bus because I'm just that kind of a jerk. We've got problems, but men just don't have. Men have problems too, but like because of the concept of the feminine and how large, if you think of the womb, the cosmic womb, the feminine dark matter, it takes up so much space. If we ignore what is going on inside of ourselves, women, we're gonna have some massive, massive problems. And I'll tell you, there is some darkness there. And like I said, I've got a strong Lilith archetype. I've got like Lilith 0 degrees square in my ascendant, so I'm kind of like
Hmm.
strong Lilith, right? But like, so I get it. So maybe I get it more than most, so that could be good and bad. But I'll tell you that it's not scary though. It's important to see it and accept it and feel the discomfort, because um sure, like I think it was, like, what was it, Nietzsche, who said, like, if you stare into the abyss too long, it stares back at you. So there's like that whole, you can become a monster if you're not careful. That's true. Been there. But you also, like, if you use the yang energy and kind of like really come into an objective space, and even of a space of I accept you and I will protect you and I will do right by you, like what Adam should have done for Lilith but didn't. Whatever.
Hmm.
Anyway,
What a
like if
prick.
you're, yeah, if you're if you're a proper husband to the inner, I guess, and I'm using a lot of analogies here, but my point is that if we I guess, actually the I Ching speaks of this the best way, so I'll go with that analogy. The superior man, right? The consciousness, like the true self, the divine self, if that interfaces with the lower self, which is seen as the feminine, at least from the I Ching's perspective, interfaces with the lower self in a way where the lower self, like the feminine, is willing to receive the masculine and trust the masculine, amazing transmutation of the corruption occurs, and it literally can heal these things. These things aren't meant to be denied, suppressed, and ignored. They're meant to be accepted, understood, and then transmuted.
Hmm.
That's at least what I see, and I feel like that's what's going on with everybody. The emotional lack of emotional awareness and the projections and the tyranny, at the root of it, that's kind of what's going on, from what I can see, at least.
Well, and it was interesting because you were saying before how you can try and help people and you can sort of give them guidance, but they're the only ones that can help themselves. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like on this feminine aspect, it's like the patriarchy, this, that. It's like it's your fault and you have to fix it. Well,
Yep.
no, it's like, so there's this like that Saturnian aspect that kind of kept women down for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, they kind of felt like maybe trapped in those mother roles. And then it's like, because of that, it went to a whole nother extreme. And now it's like, but the men can't rein the women back in. They have to do it for themselves. Right. And that's why the importance of feminine psychology and all of that stuff, which is very new, right? It's very new, this type of stuff, where it's like, again, yes, if the man can be there to support the woman and they can have that strong foundation. So it's like, you can have that trust and take that leap of faith, and then the women have to rein themselves back in because they're way out here now, right? And they're so far from that home and that grounding space, right? They've gone out here. It's time to rein it back in, ladies. Sorry.
Yeah.
But men have to be there to support them, right? And that's kind of the thing. And it's that dialoguing between the two, right? My friend calls it the healer and the dreamer, right? It's the dreamer is the moon and the healer is the sun, and it's the Hyros Gamos, right? That unification of opposites. And that's actually what's happening right now. That's why things are so polarized. Things have to become like an alchemy. Things become so polarized before there is that transmutation that takes place. Like when people are even doing like alchemy with plants and stuff, they start bringing things down to like sub-zero temperatures before they expose it to that extreme heat. And then that new substance will come out, those oils and salts and whatever, plasma, I guess, are the three phases. But yeah, it's really interesting. So we're seeing this extreme polarization, but then we're gonna see this conjunction coming back togetherness, or that's what I'm hoping. We'll see how hard that is, but that's the natural process. So it's gonna happen one way or the other.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I was just going to throw that in to support what you're saying about a natural process. That what I feel the conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius is all about. But again, like I was saying, we got to wait for it to go through a whole cycle, and even then, we can't guarantee that seed plant cycle is going to produce the wisdom required. But it should at least give, like, for the next cycle, like to clear this whole issue is what I'm trying to say. But at least some seeds of wisdom should be obtained throughout this process, this whole alchemical process, really, so that the next cycle is a little bit better. Though it's hard to say because there is clearly an effort to subvert that, and so when we talk about these natural cosmic cycles, we could say, or even consciousness cycles, if we look at it that way, these development cycles, if we were to leave them, or not really leave them, but to support the natural unfolding, it would be a different picture where humanity is at. But it's clear that there are interests who are so dark into the feminine, we would say, and then the distortions of that masculine that amounts when the wife is running the household and the wife is completely hysterical and messed up mentally, like we see, and they're the people running the planet, and also the people conceding to that, like giving over in a mass, it's a very distorted, weird relationship. But what we're seeing is the darkness of that feminine, what it does when it thinks its life is threatened. It doesn't trust in, like, we could say, the higher force or divinity or these types of things. It literally will try to kill everything, and suppress it and control it. Like, I go back to the concept of where it could go with Pluto and Aquarius and the whole transhumanist thing, and then the subsequent Pluto and Pisces. Oh my God, metaverse much? We're all just gonna, no, I'm not gonna have metaverse children. I'm not gonna eat crickets. Like, that's not a thing. But some people are fine with that. Like, oh, well, if it is what it is, whatever happens, happens. It might be cool to live in a virtual world.
We were talking about not even owning software on the computer, let alone not owning anything. You got to borrow your toaster from the government and it'll drone it to your house or whatever.
Yeah,
it's insane.
It's so, to me, I just feel like that is so antithetical to the natural way that who knows where it's going to go, but it wouldn't surprise me if nature tries to correct for the aberration, just like it would do with any illness that's inside of us and our immune system, how it would respond.
Well, that's what's happening now, I think, right? But it's like it's trying to correct, and then there's that hidden hand that's, again, it's like obfuscating this natural correction that's happening. It's literally blocking out the sun. So the sun rays aren't even reaching the planet properly, and subverting every aspect of education, healthcare, natural birthing, motherhood, fatherhood, childhood. it's all being subverted so that these natural processes are like, yeah, they're just hidden, they're blocked out, they're, most people don't even go outside. So
Yeah, fair enough. That's so true. I mean, especially in the last 2 years, not going
yeah,
out. Yeah.
totally being locked in the apartment or wherever, right? I can't imagine. Let's get into all this hidden hand stuff in the second half here. Do you want to take like a quick 5-minute break
Yeah, sure.
and come back in
Sure.
5 minutes or something? I'm gonna pause this recording. I can just do that, I think.
Yeah,
Hold
you
on.
can.
Pause. I'm pausing. Okay, we're back. What were we talking about? Hidden hand.
Yes.
The hidden hand. So it's like the time, these potential changes, like, the zodiac, all these things going on, and it's like we can kind of, take the reins of our own lives and like take those opportunities when they come up. And it's like there's this subverting of every opportunity that's coming up for people to kind of get a glimpse of what is true in this world. It's like, hey, people are realizing, oh, maybe the medical system isn't at all it's cracked up to be, and it's like, oh, but you really need us now because there's a pandemic. Like in 2015, I think, was the least people died in 2015 out of people in the last like maybe 20 or so years.
Oh,
There's
wow.
always an increase of death every year, a little bit, like in Canada, in BC, it's like 3,000 people died of the flu in 2008. And then it was like, 3,500. And then, it goes up and up. So it was about like 30,000. Then it goes up to now like 40,000. But for some reason, like in 2015, it didn't go up. It actually went down a little bit. And I think there's so much mistrust in like big pharma and the medical system. People were doing way more like homeopathy and things like that. And then, they're like, hey, we're losing lawsuits, we're losing all this. We got to rein these people back into this medical system. How can we do that? Boom. Pandemic, not any worse than the flu in reality. And then, it's like this underhanding. It's like there's always this hidden hand in every aspect. And it's always manipulating it to like the most negative way, right? There's never like, it's like I always say, like, like a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah.
Well, with these people, there would be a happy, if it was all just random, there's no conspiracy, it was all just like, oh, it's just that's just human nature. Well, human nature would get it right. Sometimes there would be a happy accident, right? There's never any happy accidents. It's always a negative, bad act, and it's like, it's never like, oh shit, we accidentally did something good for humanity. It's always it's always negative. There's never an accident that's good for humanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not weird.
Yeah.
It's like, now that you
I'm
mention it.
curious.
Yeah, very,
Yeah,
very odd.
it's very odd.
Yeah, like it's funny to me because I guess I just you think people would notice the pattern, but I mean, like when I think about it, I didn't notice a lot until I was in my, what was it, like 26, around there, maybe 27. I don't know exactly when it was, but you know, I mean, I always knew that something wasn't right, that there was injustice that didn't make sense,
Mhm.
that there were thieves that people were consenting to and saying that it's normal to be transgressed upon and stolen from. And I was just like, that none of this makes sense. But then when it clicked, like, oh shit, this is where it actually is going. Like, it goes pretty deep and it gets really disturbing. I mean, it was like a click. It just clicked. I don't know. Maybe that's what needs to happen for some people. And I think what's going on these days, again, with Aquarius energy, it accelerates progress, right? It does tend to accelerate things, and it could be very erratic and random. So, I've been surprised with some of the people who have come forth and said what they're observing. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
wow, you see this? That's cool. I was never thinking that you would have figured this out. This is great. This is actually very heartening because it also shows that there's a seed, there's potential in all of us to kind of wake up, I guess. I mean, and
Mhm.
waking up, of course, is a constant process. It's not really binary, but yeah.
It's like acknowledging what you're seeing. It's
Mm,
like you just have to acknowledge what you're seeing. Like like
exactly.
a lot of people have been like, hey, I can't stand these masks anymore. And I've been looking into it a little bit, like it's like good because it's just acknowledging what you're seeing, looking at these patterns. And again, if it was like, oh, it's just human nature to be like this, that's also odd, really. Like you think human nature would be to like thrive and like strive to like help your neighbor, help yourself, do better. Not everyone is the greediest piece of shit in the world, like these JP Morgans and whoever, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually a small percent of people that are like these hidden hand, it's like most people are good, I think. They're just dumb too, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's about like how they've been kind of herded and raised, right? Because that's the thing, is that a lot of people have, like, that's the school system, it's all of it, even registering yourself, like, or parents registering you upon birth and all of this. It's symbolic and also literal concession of your sovereignty. And so it doesn't surprise me that although a lot of people I think are good-hearted and really do want to do the right thing, that they have no idea what's going on. And so of course, like we were just saying, those, like, a lot of people are starting to kind of see a little bit more that there's a lot of wrongdoing happening and a lot of transgression on people's inherent rights. It's, I guess, where did I want to go with this? um to me, I just find it really, really strange, though, that people still can't. And so I'm trying to have compassion for that, because the vast majority of people, like, let's not lie, have no idea and still think it's okay. I mean, I just went to the dentist the other day and I was like, walking in, breathing, enjoying my natural ability to breathe. And they're like, yo, you got a mask? And I'm like, what? What's a mask? Like, I actually forgot for a little bit. I was like, oh, right. Yeah, what? And they're like, oh, they're over there. And I'm just like, you guys are still doing this?
Like, who's still doing this?
Like, what are you, like, really? It's so weird to me. But I mean, at the same time, though, if I think about like Uranus and Taurus energy, it's so interesting because of course your Uranian energy does want to support individuation, but it can be a traumatic process, and it can also bring up past life traumas and unconscious, like the long-term unconscious memories, of where it might not have been safe to individuate. And so I can see with Uranus and Taurus, and, like, the body being Taurus energy, self-sufficiency being the brighter side of Taurus energy, um,
Stability in a way,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, like homeostasis, I guess you could say, would be an ideal of Taurian energy, feeling safe in the body, with, they're so antithetical, Uranian energy and Taurus, right?
yeah.
But yet at the same time, they're trying to bring a result where it's like you're safe no matter what. No matter what kind of weird thing could come out of left field and cause you to feel immense shock in your system and have the adrenaline going, you can always come back and know that you, inside of you have the capability to figure out how to interface with this in a way that will not, like, where you will be able to thrive out of it. That's what it's trying to do. Because I mean, if you look at the world, there's a lot of interesting technologies that are coming out with regard to like permaculture and sustainability that aren't, and then we also see the other side of it too, the manipulations of things where it's like, oh, gas prices are really high and we have no idea why that is, and so there's this whole carbon footprint thing. I mean, like, I saw in an apartment the other day on a poster, it's a slumlord kind of an apartment. They own lots of apartments across Canada, so they're like slumlords but not really. They totally are. This poster is like, hey, stop using so much water. Heat and hot water is included in the rent in this place. And they're like, stop using so much water because care about the planet. Meanwhile, it's like a terrible company that's basically a feudal lord.
I'm just trying to save a few bucks, really. That's all it is.
Yeah, they're like, hey, you care, but there's so much hypocrisy. It's just really funny to me because, like, it's really clown show, like clown world is what I think they're saying these days. That's what the kids are saying. It's clown world out here.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me too, part of me just, there's this jester trickster part of me that's kind of like morbidly amused by all of this at the same time. I don't let them come out too much because it's not super productive. But I won't lie, it's kind of funny to just watch the insanity unfold, and
Yeah.
yet and yet, you know, I mean, there's so much potential. I mean, if you just think about what we could do, what this world could look like, what our children could experience, you know, if they were supported to be whoever it is that they came here to be, and to share with the planet or contribute in whatever interesting and unique way that they have to offer. Um, you know, I mean, it's so like limbo right now these days, that I'm just kind of very much like I was saying earlier about just interfacing with now to the best of my ability, and cultivating a deeper and deeper ability, or a more proficient ability to do that, because who knows where anything could go, you know. And the best thing, I feel like the best thing I can do is just do my best to be the best me. It sounds so lame, but it's true, the best me I can be, right? Because what else can you do? What else can anyone really do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially these days.
Yeah, well, everyone's got their stuff to work on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like we got to look to the future, but we can't lose track of like this moment, right now, and all the things that we have to do. And yeah, like you say, the children, like teaching kids that hey, you have like this unique thing that you are going to be able to bring to this world, you know, and just rather than hey, you're just a cog in a wheel that's just going to get a job and whatever, live in an apartment or a house or whatever, and then work and death and taxes and whatever. Like it's just such difference. And like you are this unique spark in this universe that can bring all this uh potential, like from seed to bud to like a flower, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this natural cycle. And it's like every flower is just like being plucked before it is able to bloom.
Yeah.
That's like what I feel like the past like probably like 100 years has been like, but more like the last 50 at least has been quite stifling to people's like unique potential that they have, right? Because everyone is unique and has a gift. And that's why I actually love these conversations that we're having now, because a lot of, you know, I can only go so far in my own thinking. And then when I converse with someone else like you have your own path, your own thing that you're doing, and then when we come together, it's like taking my thoughts and like focusing that, right? Like seeing
Mm-hmm.
it from your perspective, I'm able to like focus the lens more on what I'm trying to express. And so like for like even a month after this talk, I'm going to be thinking about all these things and sort of like bringing in more to focus in my life, which I find is really helpful. More people need to express like this, I think, as well. People are not expressing how they feel. They're expressing their complexes, you know. It's going back to that again. I wish people could be themselves more. I think that their true selves, you know, not this persona or like this conditioned or even like this shadow self, being
Mm.
able to express that unique part of yourself that no one else really has. You know, only you have that. You know, like yeah, it's just really hard to, it's hard to watch too, right? Like, you know, as part of you says, yeah, it's really fun and it's crazy, and then there's also this part that it's like, that's why I don't check into the news, like, because I'm having such a great time. I'm on this trajectory where I'm just like going with my own thing. And, you know, like obviously I have family struggles and unconscious struggles that, like, you know, your kids bring up, your wife, your parents, all this stuff. But, you know, like I feel like I'm on a slow and steady climb. And then I look around and I see these people, you know, their lives are falling apart. They're tearing their own lives down too in some ways, right? And then they're succumbing to all these external forces, yeah, taking their own lives. It's just, it's sad to see that stuff too. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like I'm trying to balance both these sides of how I feel about this time. You know, it's good and it's also very horrible.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, well, yeah, I mean, that's true. In a lot of ways it is. I mean, I just imagine other parts of the world too, where there's terrible, like horrible things happening, um, that I just couldn't even begin to fathom experiencing. I mean, Canada's got its problems for sure, but I think that we're both very fortunate to at least be able to do our work, you know, our daily work, but also like our inner work and whatnot. Because even as excruciating as it is to see people not getting it, you know, in my own superficial point of view, where it's like, why don't you get it together, but also like watching them in pain because they really genuinely don't understand why this is happening, you know, they're like, they don't understand. What helps us is I mean, I think what contributes is literally like us doing our work, because if we are performing the process of purifying corruption inside of ourselves so that our true self can come through, it's not just about being like an influencer or like a role model or whatever that is. It's literally about shifting the energy field. Like, you can literally help change the world through your energy in ways where you don't even have to communicate with somebody. It's your presence, you know? I mean, I've experienced this in minor ways myself, but I've seen it in other people. It's so effective. I mean, we see it all the time. We see celebrities influence people, and they may not necessarily have their shit together energetically, but yet they're still able to influence. So we can see it in all different ways. But from what I can tell, at least from my observations, whenever I'm really centered in myself, it seems that like I've had people come to me and say like they were deeply impacted, and I'm just like, what did I do? Like, what did I do? I wasn't even doing anything. I mean, like once I, just as one small example, I was doing a 10-day Vipassana course one time a few years back, and I'm a try hard. Like I said, I got a lot of Capricorn, so I'm like, I am not. It's 11 hours a day of meditation, you know, and you can't talk to anyone, you can't make eye contact. And of course, you can if you really need to, but they want you to be focusing on getting conscious of what's going on inside of you. And so I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm doing all the meditations. I'm getting up at 4 a.m. I'm blah, 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 you know, whatever. So I hardcored it. And like afterwards, you know, I had people come up to me and were just like, you were so inspirational to me. Like when I wanted to get up and leave, I saw you there and you were always there. So I came and sat down and like kept going. And I was like, dude, you don't even want to know what was going on in my head while I was sitting there meditating, because it was tough. Like, I'm not gonna lie. But it's like, it was kind of cool though, because it showed me just me. I'm not really anyone really special, in all honesty. I have a very small YouTube channel. I do my work to the best of my ability, but I'm not exactly like world famous or anything. So I don't have a lot of these experiences, and yet having that experience, it showed me, you know, you don't have to, like what you're doing to do your own work is really like you're having impacts on people that you don't even realize that you're having, you know? So it's, I feel like because one of the things that I have actually been working on is I call it the spiritual rabbit hole rehab, and it's about deconditioning all the crap that we've picked up on our journey on the spiritual path, so that we can kind of get to basics and really navigate the reality properly. And one of the things is we got to check our shadow archetypes, right? And so like even wanting to save people is a shadow archetype in a sense, you know? And like I totally get that, because you know it's just it makes sense. Like if I can just help, then it would make things better, right? Sometimes
Mhm.
we want help and sometimes people ask us for help, but I guess it's about differentiating where we're trying to control reality. Because on one hand, we were talking, was it Wu Wei, is that what you said
Mhm.
they call it, where it's about controlling but not controlling, like kind of being in that center point, I guess we could say, where it's like we're using will but we're not using it too much. Like we're not trying to crush reality, we're just trying to work with it, I guess we could say, in a divine way, I guess, if I'm interpreting that properly. Would you
Yeah.
say that's
It's
correct?
like like in a natural way, right? It's not
Yeah.
like contrived, but it's
Yeah, okay,
still
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Continue.
just want to say, like, I think that's the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
And then so that way we don't even necessarily have to think too hard about it. We can be in that space where we know what's right to do and when. And so we know when a help or a support to someone is the right kind of interaction with reality. And then we can also know, like, I would think somatically, emotionally, psychically, when it's better for us to pull back and kind of like get centered, because maybe we're trying to project something onto reality that is more about control, because we all have that south node energy, like I was saying, with Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto and Capricorn. So it's coded into us in a lot of ways to it's almost like a tradition for humanity to want to build and make things work and put a box on it, I guess we could say. And on one hand, we're trying to help, but we might also be suffocating somebody in a way that is crushing their spirit. It's had many a dark night of the soul over this. I'll just put it that way.
It's really tough to navigate. Yeah.
It's a precarious situation, but yet I think when we figure it out, like, because I've noticed it myself, and so I have the evidence, at least from experiential understanding, like it does get easier. Like life becomes easier because we don't have to hold on to so much. We even have more energy, right? Like it takes a lot of energy to hold on to those Saturnian constructs that are so corrupt, right?
And that letting go. And yeah, it's like that, like you said, I love that story that you told about meditating there. And it's like, you're just like, okay, I'm going to go do this. You're having your own struggles, and then someone sees you, and it's like inspiring just to see you doing your own thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that, yeah, everyone, if they could just do that in their lives, right? Their own thing, that what they're trying to accomplish, they're on their path, right? It's the people that aren't on the path that are just, yeah, like blowing in the wind, right? Those are the people that kind of, they need the most help, but it's like you can only help by doing your own thing. Yeah, you can't cram it down their throat. Yeah, it's so difficult.
Oh, I just want to say, like, that's one of the things I wanted to add, is just if we think about that sun, like you were talking about, right? Like the sun can be so inspiring to people. So when we're in our solar energy, whatever that looks like for us, it can help people to feel like, hey, maybe it might be okay. That person seems totally fine. Like I've seen one great example is, and this is a distortion in female psychology, right? Like it was not easy for me to cut my hair. I had to cut my hair because I was having a hair loss issue after having my baby. And so I was just like, oh my God, I gotta cut this off. I'm gonna be a dude. I'm gonna look like a dude. You know what I mean? And so it's interesting to me though, because when I think about female, like the whole like role of female and what we're supposed to look like based on the consensus agreement on that, we have these definitions, and yet you could see somebody who's like perfectly beautiful, like technically based on what we all have agreed is beautiful, and if they have no solar life force coming out of them, it doesn't radiate quite the same as somebody who might be fat, lazy, ugly, covered in poxes or whatever, but they totally love themselves and they're enjoying life. And it's okay that they might not look quote unquote perfect. They might even be wearing a potato sack for all I know. I don't know, but they have love radiating out of them, and they're joyful and unassuming, but yet maybe courageous and brave too, like all the stuff we love to see coming out of the sun, right? Like when we think of the archetype, that person is going to be way more successful and way more happy and even more attractive, strangely enough, because it's their energy. So
well, the more you like someone, the more attracted you are to them as well. Like they actually will look differently.
Totally.
If you actually like who they actually are within. It's very interesting. Yeah, your hair used to be so crazy. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
you had like crazy ass hair.
It was so great because when you're pregnant, your hair doesn't shed, so you're just like getting all this hair, and it's like, oh my God, it's so luxurious. But then for me, and for like, it's like 30% of women actually have postpartum shedding, and it's insane. Like for me, it was so much, and so it was just
get rid of it.
Yeah, I just was like, F it, I'll cut it. I mean, I'm half black, I can pull it off at least, because we got that going on. A lot of us in our culture have short hair, so I'm like, it won't be so bad. But it was a hard decision, you know what I mean? It's not an easy decision to make.
It'll grow back.
Well, that's the thing. It'll grow back, and it's also something that for me, I just want to share this stuff because I hope it helps people. Like I have a Leo rising, right? I got a lot of Leo energy. I got Lucifer in Leo too, which is a real mind fuck. I'll just put it this way, because it's also near my rising. So to me, like superficial looks has been always a focus of value, like what you look like is and how much you're worth. And it wasn't so much on other people how I felt that, it was more like for me, right? And so when I like a few years back, it was like, I don't know, 10 years ago, I just out of nowhere got this insane cystic acne. Like I never had skin problems, but it was so bad. It was like, you know, when you see like those commercials where it's like, this is someone with acne who's got their, like, it's really fucked. Go buy our product and fix it. I was the before picture, and it was so unsettling for me as someone who was healing from agoraphobia for having that for 10 years prior.
Mm.
That it was interesting to me because it came for a reason, right? Like I honestly feel like when I talk about everyone has a unique path to follow, right? And like roles with the cube that is honest, like that, those Saturnian corruptions, like we need to go within ourselves to get wisdom, because part of what my lesson was is don't give a shit what you look like. Don't, like, not to say don't care about your appearance, don't take care of yourself, just don't prioritize that. And that lesson's been coming up so many times. I spent 3 years trying to heal this acne using every method I could think of, every method I researched. Nothing worked until I said, okay, fuck it, I'm done giving a shit what I look like. Then it healed in like 6 months, and I'm not lying. It's insane. Like it healed in like 6 months, and then it was gone, and it never came back. So to me, we don't know a lot about how this reality operates. We don't know a lot about why we're even here, and we don't know a lot about you know, what our potential really is until we start going within and really listening inside. Like I said, I tried everything except Accutane because I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't take prescriptions, but I tried pretty much everything that you could do, change my diet and everything, and I'm sure it helped to some extent, but it wouldn't knock it out, right? I think that our consciousness is meant to interact with this reality in very unique ways, and what we're here to offer to the world, if we don't listen to what's inside of us and really get to understand what it's actually trying to say and accept who we are, you know, it's going to be hard to be effective and fulfilled even, you know. And I'm not saying I'm perfect or anything, because I'm definitely not at all, but I've learned a lot. So I think I've got that going for me, and I just, you know, I'm just sharing this stuff because I'm hoping that it will be useful, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Great.
When were you in when were you in agoraphobic? Just wait, what?
Oh yeah, no, I had that. So like I said, I've mentioned this to you before briefly, but like I've had a really kind of, like, my first 30 years on the planet, you know, leading up to my Saturn return, it was hardcore Saturn, like very difficult. And part of like the Leo rising stuff that was going on with me, like the distortions in that, especially with Lucifer energy, like not trusting my inherent worth, and in like I had a lot of self-esteem issues. And so it was always a struggle for me to even go to school throughout my years, but it really got bad around 21, 22. And I just couldn't go outside anymore. I couldn't stand feeling like so ugly that, like, it was just like, I can't have people look at me. Like if people look at me, I can't handle it. And I would have like panic attacks. And so I just wouldn't go outside. I'd go out like once a month, and I'd only go out with my boyfriend. So it was pretty bad. I will say that I got a lot of video games played during that time. So, you know, I guess there's that, but which was great because I learned a lot. You would think you wouldn't learn much from games, but like especially RPGs and stuff, there's some great stories and insights into archetypes and stuff in there. So I think everything's for a reason. But yeah, it was between then until about 21 to about 29. So almost 10 years of it, where it was full blown. And yeah,
Crazy.
it was pretty bad. Like it was, I wish I could explain like why. I wouldn't want to get into it because like you could see it all on my chart, but it was part of my path, right? I'm just so different from people, because that was the other part too, is I always felt so different that it was just like, what is wrong with you? Like you don't fit here, you know? And you know, I'm still a weirdo and stuff, but now I kind of at least understand better the why I'm like this, and why and how I can actually be of use, which is important to me. So
Yeah, good. I'm glad you got over it.
yeah, I mean, it took a while, but one day I was just like, okay, I'm done. That's kind of how I work, where I'm just like, okay, I'm done one day, and yeah, and just stopped pretty much. And there were tests there around the Saturn return that kind of like challenged that. But yeah, I mean, that's what I think that's what it is for a lot of people. Sometimes you have to get to a point where it's just like, okay, I'm done. You have to go through the experience so that you can get some experiential wisdom from it and then move forward.
How
Like I said,
long was this period? Sorry.
yeah, no, I was
From
just gonna say, like I
22.
said about everyone having a unique path, like even that I think was, I'm sure I could have made different decisions for it to have changed, but it was so severe, right? That I don't know if I would have actually been able to make those changes. Anyway, yeah,
Mhm.
you were saying.
Well, just how long was this period? Like 8 years or something?
Yeah, it was like 8, 9, like
Fucking
full
crazy.
blown about 8 years, but it was probably like longer than that because I was having trouble even going to school. Like even in my teen years, well, even in elementary school, I mean, I was always really good at school, so I got away with it. But in grade 6, I spent half of my year doing class alone in another room, like self-taught. My teacher would just give me textbooks and I'd just do them. And then, you know, in another grade, I ended up actually just not going back to school and they let me finish the year at home. So it was always a struggle, but it was full blown from like 21, 22 up to 29, where I was like, okay, really, like, I can't even go outside anymore. But yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty intense when I think about it. It's just like, wow, I feel so different. Like I can still feel my heartstrings tugged when I think back to what I was dealing with, but I'm definitely not the same person as far as I don't really have stress about going outside anymore. I mean, I still do to an extent, but it doesn't stop me. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like large groups, but yeah, I wasn't like agoraphobic. That's
Mm-hmm.
so crazy to picture you like that now. That's so
Yeah.
wild.
I know, right? But then if you think about too, like again, like my mentor who taught me astrology, when he was reading my chart for the first time, he's like, "You're a Leo rising and you're going through this. What the hell's going on?" And so
Hmm.
I was like explaining it to him. I'm like, dude, but look at Uranus and Pluto where they're at, right? Like my upbringing was not good. Neither was the neighborhood I grew up in. So like, you know, but that's the thing, like what we have inside of ourselves, it wants to come through. So if we support that, we can move through a lot of the stuff that we feel is suppressing our expression, right? So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
amazing the struggles people go through because like look at where you are now. Like some people would have been broken by that, you know?
Yeah, I didn't want to be though. Like that was the thing. Part of me was like I was suicidal, like for sure. But there's a part inside of me. It's like my higher self, it's my true self that it's like, no, 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 you can't. Like you were supposed to go through this stuff to get context. Don't check out, like you have shit to do. Right? Whether or not it's some massive contribution, I don't know. It might not even be a blip, but it's something that needs to be done. And there's a part of me that it refuses to succumb to that. And so I haven't even really dealt with depression for years now at this point either, which was something that I obviously, when you're agoraphobic, you're going to have depression too.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of it just kind of alleviated. Now, I won't say that I don't have emotional struggles here and there, but like I'm so much better equipped, you know,
Mhm.
so much better equipped. I have Vipassana to thank for that, on all honesty, astrology and even tarot. Like these kinds of things helped me get incredible context into what was going on inside of me so that I didn't feel crazy anymore. I just realized like how I work and learned to work with it.
This is a process.
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
Definitely.
I still have emotional struggles and stuff as well. You know, family, children bring a lot of that stuff out
Oh, for sure.
subconscious, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like night and day from where I was before too.
Yeah.
That's just so amazing. I'm so glad you told that story. I was like on the verge of tears since you were talking about meditating and helping that person. And I've been on the verge of tears for like half an hour now
Oh,
listening to your story.
well, I mean, you know, it's a lot, right? Like it's a lot to deal with, but yet, like, I honestly feel like everyone is supposed to interface with reality in a unique way, and sometimes stuff happens to make us forget that, you know. And so it's just about like being willing to, like I was saying with the Lilith stuff too, like that Lilith archetype. I wanted to be a certain way. Nobody in my family was okay with that. No one in my neighborhood was okay with that at all, and they wanted to make sure I knew about it on the regular. Like I'm
Mhm.
talking multiple times a day, every day for like years, right? That gets really coded in. And so the thing is though, as you start looking like at the astrology just as one example, because there's other stuff you can look at too, and even like the tarot and whatnot, you start realizing, oh, wait a second, like So it's actually okay that I'm like this. I just need to figure out how to interface with the reality that's in front of me in a way so that I can do this in a way that is not causing me to feel shame, right? Or even conflicts that are unnecessary. Sometimes conflict is necessary. That's the other thing too. But
Hmm.
it's just trying, like, you just need to figure out how you do. And then when you do that, and it's a process, like you said, you just get better and better at it. And like I truly believe the divine has always got our back and is trying to work with us. We just have to figure out how to connect to it, reach our hand out, and trust that the hand is that is reaching back to us is actually going to be there. It really is
Hmm.
true. Like, I've seen it happen so many times in my own life.
Yeah, it's that trust and taking that leap of faith, and yeah, using that will. See, like if you had just been like, oh, this is well, I'm fated to this,
Yeah.
and I'm just gonna not bother doing anything, right? You
Mhm.
wouldn't have gotten through it, I don't think, right?
Yeah.
You would have succumbed.
Yeah.
But
Like I
you,
was saying about the hometown here, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say there's so many people here. Like, I almost feel like Nova Scotia is filled with these souls of just this incredible talents that are just maybe energetically we're supposed to have this pressure on us so that we grow, like we need the resilience to grow into whatever shape we're supposed to be growing into, right? Like, not everyone's meant to be a certain type of plant. Maybe we're supposed to be a giant redwood. I don't know, you know?
yeah.
So yeah, anyway, just want to throw it out there.
Cool, cool. That's amazing. That was such an amazing story. I'm very moved.
Oh, just wanted to share it. It kind of went there. I went,
Cool.
kind of went, thought I went a little too far, but whatever.
It's
Yeah,
all good. I think people will enjoy it that check it out.
good.
Yeah, Nova Scotia, it's like very colorful buildings, it's like it's there on the underneath this like creativity, and yeah, I don't know what's going on. This whole world is so wild, man. So
Yeah.
wild. I love hearing people's stories. That's like whenever, like if I were to meet you in real life, I would have asked you like your whole life story. And I'm so glad you got to share that today. Probably feels good.
I don't know. I'm always just like, it's, I hope I just hope it's helpful to people. I don't want to be taking up time for no reason. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I think that stuff is the most helpful, at least for me, like hearing people's stories and their journeys and their struggles and then like their triumphs. For me, that is like the most inspiring. Like you have it's like you got all the context, you have this background, and then you see like, yeah, it's like you get to see this journey in a story sort of like unfold before you within like, I don't know, a few minutes, really.
Mm,
And I think that's
yeah.
very inspiring.
Yeah. And I honestly believe, like, I mean, just imagine if people were supported, properly supported, even through this time right now, which is why, I do the kind of work I do. And I'm sure why a lot of people are called to do this kind of work, either for themselves or for their family or like in a professional setting, because we are kind of in a birthing process in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
man, and you just think about the concept of being birthed, it's it's pretty scary, I mean, on so many
Struggle.
levels.
Yeah, there's struggle, there's triumph. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny, now I'm jumping back to like an hour ago.
Mm.
Remember when you said like Jupiter and Saturn, they're like those opposites, right?
Yeah.
Like in Iranian and like Persian astrology, like Jupiter represents life and Saturn represents death. And in like 7 AD, there was three conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn in Pisces, and that was like what Jung said, like marked the age of Pisces. And
Mm.
then so we have this like Jupiter, Saturn, and Aquarius marking this age of Aquarius. But it's like, yeah, it's like these opposites. There's always this, it's like the magnetic pull. Like there's always like this, it goes out and it goes back in. Like I was saying, like the extremes, it goes so far. And it's like that it's a whole cycle. Obviously, we know that it's a cycle. And it's just
Yeah.
interesting to see these opposites play out in people's lives too, right? Like we have these extreme moments and then we have like this homeostasis kind of point. Yeah, it's just so incredible. People's lives are so incredible. Since a young age, I've always been just really interested in like people's lives and struggles and where they've come from. And yeah, that's like my favorite stuff right here.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways, like, to experience life. I mean, everyone's gone through something that no one else has gone through.
Everyone has struggles. Everyone has doubts, you know, like, and everyone has things that they want to accomplish. That's the saddest part, is when they succumb to this and don't get to accomplish those things that they have deep inside of them. I think that's the biggest tragedy.
Yeah, I just hope that the concept of the eternal soul is true, so that at least the development can continue and that it's not the end, right? At least, I mean, I obviously don't know. I don't know for sure, but it seems to make sense to me that whether or not, you know, we're able to retain our consciousness, like awareness of the on an egoic level, we may not be able to do that. The great development to our consciousness. So a lot of us probably don't remember, but that we, you know, we lived before. But I do like it, you know, maybe I'm very romantic in this way, but I do kind of like the idea that at least we get to continue to learn, because it is a hard life here. And it doesn't surprise me when people decide to leave, or if they weren't able to do anything with their life and they're at the end of the life feeling anguish because they weren't strong enough to do what they wanted to do. It's not easy, you know, it really isn't. I mean, if you think of nature in general, it's a pretty rough place. If you look at animals and plants, I mean, just thinking about sprouting, if I'm sprouting clover seeds and I'm making, you know, making microgreens or sprouts or something like that, like some of the seeds don't sprout, some of them don't get to grow, and you look at them, they even look like little babies, like the little seeds, they look like little embryos, and I'm just like, wow, that's really sad sometimes. I know it sounds weird, but sometimes I just feel sad, or it's like, wow. But if you think about it, if everything was alive and everything flourished and lived, I don't know if that'd be a good thing either. It really becomes a existential conundrum when you think about just this reality, you know. I mean, there's so many things that can kind of fuck with you when you think about it, because it's not always, oh, if everybody's good then everyone will win, and if you know, like, there's so much more complexity here that, yeah, I don't know.
Death is a part of life.
Yeah.
All endings are actually beginnings.
True.
It's that Lindsay Sharman book. But it's like, yeah, everything is like it's like this process, right? Death, life. I think there is this continuation of the development of the soul. You know, Walter Russell talks about it, Bruce Lipton talks about it. I think it's there, you know, it's like, and then that's what the birth chart shows, you know, like people are like, my kids are like probably like my ancestors that have been like reborn into this life to like do something. It's very wild looking at their charts. And yeah,
well, I hope that we get to a point where we get to know. That would be great.
well, I think we do when we die. We get that period of rest and we go back to the stillness.
Oh, well, I don't want to die yet. I don't want to get to that point quite yet. I just mean, like, maybe humanity in general, like maybe we could have a connection with that other side to the point where we can know. But I do think that we need a lot more maturity to even be worthy of that. So I don't know. We'll see.
You know, Manly P. Hall talks about that. He's like, you know, like to become more and more sensitive in your life, then you have more perception because you're more sensitive. And he's like, when you die, you get to know all, like the all. You get to experience the all. He's like, but the real point of the occultist and the initiate and the mystic is to know that before they die. Is to know that living in life. Yeah, it's very interesting. I find that guy so fascinating, his work. But
yeah, he was, I mean, I'm not intimately familiar with his work, but everything I've heard him say, it's clear that he has a lot of wisdom and insight into the unseen world, for sure.
Yeah, he's really neat. And as he got older, like a lot of people know him from his younger stuff. As he got older, he got a lot into psychology and a lot of other stuff too. And he matured as well, right? As we all do.
Yeah.
I think this was an incredible talk. I think
Yay.
we should end it here.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that sounds good.
We'll get into procession another time, or I'll do it on my own or something.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, we kind of knew that we were gonna go into parts unknown today. So yeah, like I said, I just hope that everything we talked about is useful. That's really what matters most to me.
I think it was. I'm like fired up. I'm inspired just sitting
great.
there. Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
I'm going to start a new playlist on my channel, Existential Ass Kicking with Sarah DeHaven. and then our videos are going to go in there, and we'll just keep adding to them as time goes on.
Sweet, sounds good.
You cool with that or what?
Yeah, I like that. Existential ass kissing.
That's what I was going to call our
kissing?
last video.
No, kicking. No,
ass
not
kicking,
kissing.
not kissing.
Yeah,
No.
sorry.
Could do some ass kissing too. It's not too bad, but as long as
I don't know. Now that brings up more existential questions. I won't go there. Yeah.
We can do it again.
Yeah.
I'm free whenever you want.
No, I would love to. I really enjoy having these conversations.
Yeah,
So
I feel like there's a lot to get off of our chests. It was, I knew this was going to happen. I think people will enjoy it. People enjoy this type of stuff.
Well, good. I'm glad they do. I'm glad someone does.
I had to listen to our last video because I was like, what did we even talk about? I didn't know what to call it or anything. It was like wild because I go all over the map. You know, I like it. That's my Sagittarius, Uranus, Mercury.
Yeah.
Kind of like I'm just going. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed. I think people like it. Stay tuned. I have a bunch of stuff coming up. Archetypes videos, stuff on Jung. Yeah. Stay tuned. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming back.
Yeah, it's all good. Thanks, Luke. Thanks for inviting me.
Do you want to just leave your contacts or whatever? I'll put them in the description, but people like to hear it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so my website is adaptguidance.com. That is the place where if you're looking for readings with me or you want to work with me one-on-one, you can fill out a request form on there. And I have a YouTube channel where I just kind of share information and teach and that kind of stuff. Great for people who are into self-realization and individuation. That's youtube.com/adaptguidance. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it there.
Cool. Subscribe to our channels, like our stuff, comment on my videos, and let me know what you think, please. That's it for today. Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.